Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Pure Nintendo podcast. My name is Gemma, and with me this week I have three esteemed members of the Pure Nintendo clan. I have welcome back Trev after a couple of weeks hiatus.
Yeah, I've missed it, and I'm excited for today.
We've missed you too. And back with me is the ever-present Kirk. Thanks for joining me again, Kirk.
I am happy to be here, as always.
Thank you. And our special guest, you could say, our esteemed leader and founder of Pure Nintendo. Welcome, Justin. How are you?
Oh, good. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Our pleasure. And we're very excited this week because we are finally at the tail end of Tears of the Kingdom's release. It will be out when this episode airs in 4 short days. So it's happening very, very soon. It's very, very exciting. We're all huge Zelda fans, so this episode is kind of dedicated to our final thoughts and theories, feelings, whatever we have to say about the game ahead of its launch next week, or this week, I should say. So I thought, with that in mind, let's start with you, Justin, as our kind of special guest. You were lucky enough to review Breath of the Wild at the time when it came out, all that way back in 2017. And I know you had mixed feelings, even though you gave it a good review and it was overall pretty positive. There were a few little niggles, and I just wondered if we could start with your hopes and expectations for this game and whether any of those have been met so far with what we've seen trailer-wise. What do you think?
Yeah, so I was having to jog my memory a little bit on what were some of my qualms in the review. So I was reading through it again. But yeah, I think from what we've seen from the trailers for Tears of the Kingdom, it hasn't shown, like, some of the qualms that I had were like the dungeons, the bosses, the story, some of those types of things, and we're just getting kind of glimpses of those, and we don't really have confirmation of dungeons. We've seen some. There was that thing that kind of was rising out of the desert that looked maybe dungeon-esque, but I'm trying to keep my hopes, my expectations in check there. That if it's still kind of divine beast like, and not, I don't even care if it's like necessarily back to full traditional dungeons, just some other, at least movement in that direction, right? Having some more maybe themed dungeons, because again, the divine beasts were all fairly similar interior theme, the kind of motif, and it was very similar to even the shrine interior. So going back to, hey, let's have a fire temple, let's have a water, stuff like that would be really cool. And then kind of unique bosses. Again, the various Ganons that you fought in Breath of the Wild just felt kind of derivative of one another. So there wasn't really, like, almost some of the most interesting to fight bosses in Breath of the Wild were actually the Lynels or the overworld bosses, right? The Hinoxes, the Stalnoxes, those types of things. So I do hope there's some big growth there. And it looks like in the trailer, there were some really crazy, boss looking things.
Yeah.
There's one that was kind of like in like a snowstorm or something so I'm like, it gives me some hope there that they're addressing those things, but I'm still trying to keep my expectations in check. But yeah, I am hopeful.
That's good. Yeah, I think there was some sort of ice monster that looked like it was coming out of that cyclone thing. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that looked really interesting. There was I think there was a 3-headed dragon as well in the trailer.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't sure if that was a callback to one of the original bosses from the original game or not.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe?
I think it is. I think in one of the screenshots it even said Gleeok, which is
did it? There you go. It'd be weird if it was a 3-headed dragon not called Gleeok, I suppose, in Hyrule. Or how many 3-headed dragons are there?
You call him Threeok because you get 3 head.
Yeah, that's a missed opportunity right there.
Yeah. And I think maybe it wasn't a screenshot. It was in that like 30-second ad that they had, but it like flashes on screen just briefly. You can see the Gleeok, but it says Flame Gleeok. And so it's like, why would they qualify it with flame if there wasn't also potentially other ones? So that has me intrigued that maybe a Gleeok is just going to be a new type of overworld boss, kind of like, there's the Hinoxes, the Stalnox, there was variations of some of the overworld
And
bosses or mini bosses.
I don't know if it's a boss exactly, but there was some sort of shark entity with all this black gloop around it. I don't know if it qualifies as a boss, but it looked interesting.
It did, like, that could be like, if it's not a boss, maybe it's a mini boss or something, something.
Yeah. And speaking of dungeons, I think from the trailer, it did look like there were lots of underground sections. So I don't know if they're dungeons exactly, but it seems like there's a lot of, like, we've obviously got the overworld, right? Hyrule. We've got the Sky Islands, which we'll talk about, I think, soon as well. And then it looks like there's a lot of underworld action. Looks like there's a lot of caves, a lot of, I don't know, beneath Death Mountain-esque type areas. Do we think that's leaning towards dungeons? Maybe Kirk or Trev, do you have an opinion on that?
I would think it would have to be, if it is a throwback to the original, like, because you remember the original NES Zelda, all the dungeons were these underground kind of, labyrinths. It wasn't until, later games where dungeons, started taking on various more unique forms, and not saying that even being underground they can't be unique, but I do feel like there's got to be something, and even if it's not full traditional dungeons, like to Justin's point, those dungeon elements, those unique themes, those bosses, just fighting a various cloud form again, and it's like. That's kind of the joke with like a lot of the superhero movies, they end fighting a giant cloud from space or whatever. Like, give us some of those memorable bosses, because that's often what you remember with the dungeon, the themes, the bosses. Is not so much the puzzle structure, because the shrines cover that, but I don't know. But I think as people have, throughout the years been addressing that they miss these things, that Nintendo will incorporate them in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think you're right about the bosses. Even when we did our Coopercast series about the Legend of Zelda games, the historical aspect, we all had our favorite bosses over the years that we remember distinctly. So that's cool. I just thought I would see, you mentioned superhero movies, and the trailer had a few elements that reminded me of superhero moments, like when Link looks like he's rallying kind of troops from Hyrule, and there was a scene where there's a few different kind of members of different groups all lunging forward to attack someone, who knows who it was, and it looked like an Avengers moment, like getting the gang together and attacking on all fronts. Did anyone else notice that? Or was it just me?
Yeah, I think I took notice of it. Maybe I'm just so used to seeing that kind of thing in movies and in other games now that it didn't seem that out of place for me or notable.
True. Yeah.
But now that you mention it, we haven't had any moments like that that I can recall in a Zelda game.
No, that's right.
It's always just been, if not just Link, then maybe a couple other people coming to help out. So there are little moments like that in the various trailers and teasers that they put out where I think I can hardly wait to see how this factors into it. Is this like a really big moment, or is this just like going to be a common moment and the bigger moments are even bigger? So I am eager to find out how what we've seen becomes pieces of the puzzle. For the bigger game.
Like, is it part of the story, like the preamble that leads to whatever situation we find ourselves in? I think it's what is it called this time around? It's not the Great Calamity. It's the Upheaval, I believe, is the apocalyptic event that we're dealing with in Hyrule this time around. And it seems like it's set a few years after Breath of the Wild. Do we all think that? Have we got any confirmation of that, or is that just speculation at this point in terms of the timeline?
Or is it set before and after?
Well, that's it. Probably. Yeah. Well, that's a good question because,
The hero of time.
Exactly. And, with Zelda especially, there's a scene with her, I think it's towards the end of the last trailer, final trailer, where she's calling for Link to find her. And she's on some sort of platform with a kind of rectangular prism in the center, like an altar type of thing. And it looks very similar to where Link is earlier in the trailer, but it looks more pristine. It looks newer, whereas where Link is, it looks older and it's more run down or, ruined. And also when she's standing there, she's kind of at ground level and can see the sky, and there's no sky islands hanging around. So is she trapped somewhere else, or is that beforehand? Is it time related? So many questions.
Yeah. I mean, to your point about looking like a superhero thing, what do superhero movies do once they've had a good run and they have to reboot it? They do like time travel. We've seen that with the Avengers and the X-Men and different ones. Not saying that they have to do that with Link, but certainly we've seen a lot of those, time elements throughout various games, some more than others, but it definitely opens a lot of potential when Nintendo can use an existing world and then tweak it to feel like in a secondary world, even though it has the same guts. So,
yeah, because it seems like some of it is definitely set sort of a few years maybe after Breath of the Wild, in that some of the, I think it's Castletown looks like it's rebuilding after the Great Calamity. So it seems like some of it is at least set there, but it's definitely not all of it. And then the Sky Islands are the next kind of big thing. Like, how do they get there? Why are they there? Who made them come there? Is that related to Ganondorf's kind of whatever he's doing with the whole malice thing with the red energy up into the sky? Is he breaking barriers and sending the Sky Islands plummeting down from somewhere up above? What do we think about the whole Sky Island thing?
Do we even know if it's Ganondorf? I'm sorry. Like, have they explicitly said?
I mean, they haven't explicitly said that. What was it? One of the last trailers actually did show his face, or it seems like Ganondorf's face.
Definitely
right?
looked like him. Yeah.
Could it be Demise or?
Wow, that is a good question.
Yeah, well, I know like there was two shots in that trailer, Trev. One of them shows like from behind, and that looked very Demise like, right? Like it had this kind of this red hair, but it almost looked tentacle like, or it just looked different. Like he looked maybe augmented, like not quite human there. So I don't know again if that is Demise there, but like he's about to turn his head and then it cuts, right? But then we do see Ganondorf, or seemingly Ganondorf. It's if it's not Ganondorf, it looks very much like him, but later on in the trailer, and we think he's speaking, right? Someone's saying, you're witnessing a king's revival or whatever. But I don't know if we have confirmation. Well, no, I think we do have confirmation, because I think there were some tweets that Nintendo did with some of the artwork after the trailer, and they showed some artwork for Link. They had some artwork for some of the champions that are being shown in the new trailer, and then they had artwork for Ganondorf, and I'm pretty sure they mentioned that it was Ganondorf. So I think it's been decently confirmed now.
Yeah, I think so too. It definitely looked like him, although he looks, there's been some talk about how he presents a little differently with his, little red beard, and he's got his hair tied back in a samurai kind of style, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know, he looks pretty cool, but also, pure evil. So, the Demise thing. The Demise thing is interesting though, because I thought also it looked very much like Demise with the tentacle hair. There is a theory that it's potentially Ganondorf in another form, or that Ganondorf and Demise are the same, or at least they're linked somehow. I don't know. We rely on your knight. Not sure. That's a really good question. I don't know the answer. We hopefully will find out next week. Yeah, I think it just looks like Ganondorf.
Link.
Yeah, like you said. I think he says something like, you're here to witness a king's revival and the birth of his new world. And then he unleashes, or is it before or after he unleashes the great malice catapult to the sky? And then, of course, all the enemies appear. We've got, like just hordes of enemies obviously appearing on Hyrule. It's hard to know, obviously, when this all occurs. Is this the very beginning? Is there a moment of peace before all this happens? And the other thing I was reading about, and I think this is official, I think it's on the website as well,
only I can do,
is that I think Link's adventure starts in the sky, from what I gather. Like, it seems like the Sky Island or a Sky Island is the equivalent of the tutorial section or the Great Plateau. It's like he's going to start there, learn his moves, before he makes his way down to the ground. Is that something we feel is true?
You are not alone.
That's a good question. I guess I assumed when they were showing the feature of how he could warp from the ground to roofs, I kind of... The impression I got was that was like an early thing he learned. I thought maybe that would aid getting to the sky, but maybe you're right. Maybe you fall from the sky and then got to work your way back. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think it's interesting with the Sky Islands, is it zone A, zone I? I don't even know how to say it. The constructs.
Yeah.
At first, it seems like they're enemies because, in the gameplay trailer, especially, Link had to fight a few of them. But are they really minions of Ganondorf, or are they just protecting something? Are they just kind of guards? Any thoughts on that?
I hope they're minions, or I'll feel guilty fighting them.
But then you get to make up and become friends. So
true.
Yeah.
It's your classic kung fu story.
That's right. That's a hallmark of a good story, right? Enemies become friends.
I feel like they're powered by AI. Like everything. Yeah. True AI, maybe.
I think there will be friendly ones. I think you're right, though, Gemma, that like they don't necessarily seem like they're influenced by malice, or at least we haven't seen some that they almost have like a different glow, like a color glow to them, right? They have the kind of that green blue glow, whereas all the malice creatures, the goblins, anything else that is from the red moon, it's all kind of red or purple tinted. So yeah, maybe they're just kind of guardians of this area. And it seemed like there was even one construct that was like a steward thing, like it was like sweeping in one of the gameplay moments. So there may actually be various. There's obviously going to be various forms of these constructs, but maybe some of them are more like custodial, janitor constructs, and some are more combat.
Yes, I did notice that, and I think it's actually got a name. I think, if this is correct, it's a ranger construct as opposed to a, I don't know, Zonai construct, the warrior ones. I don't know, but I think it's like a little janitor tending to the trees and sweeping and
hopefully you can't hurt them, right? Hopefully, they're doing their thing, and you just
then I would feel bad, Trev, if I had to hurt one of those ones.
Well, maybe they'll just brush it off, like when you're doing sword tutorials or whatever, and you hit somebody and they're like, oh, shake it off.
So I mean, there's going to be a lot to unpack. It'll be interesting next week on the show because we'll have had kind of a day, maybe two, with the game when we record, so we'll see how far we get into it by that point.
I just remembered I may not be available for next episode. I got something going on.
Is it related to Tears of the Kingdom? And you're
we'll just have to cancel. We'll all be playing it and come back.
We could play while we
I
record.
I do feel like next Friday there's going to be a lot of people calling in sick.
Yes, definitely.
See if they were smart, they would have requested the day off months ago, because we've known for a while.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like Kirk. Kirk was smart enough to do.
I've requested the day off, and I will be available Saturday because by then my son will have taken everything over, as I mentioned in the past. And I'll just be watching him anyway.
Yeah.
He's given me an entire schedule of when I'm allowed to play it, and then when he gets it, and then when I get it back for Friday.
Really?
Yeah, Saturday hasn't been. Saturday's not on the wall yet.
That's very organized. That's I like that. And I mean, Justin, you have another way of organizing your time to share with your wife, with Caitlin, which is just having two.
Yes. Yeah. So we did the route that Nintendo, I'm sure, was wanting everybody to do is, hey, we're not going to be able to play this at the same time. We should get another Switch. And Nintendo's quietly nodding in the background, like, yes.
Yeah.
Good. So yeah, we did get another Switch because Katie's like, well, if you're playing, I don't want to get spoiled. I want to play through myself, because that's how we did Breath of the Wild. Like Zelda's one of the franchises she's really, gotten into, and so yeah, she wants to kind of go her own. It was really fun even sharing stories too, like, oh, where'd you go off the plateau? Oh, I went this way. Oh, I did this. So like we don't necessarily share stories like on spoilers or things. It's just like, oh, where'd you go? Oh, you went to. Oh, okay, cool. I went to. But, so we're excited about that kind of thing this time too. But she was like, no, I definitely want to be able to play while you're playing. So yeah, that's one way to solve it.
Definitely, yeah. It's the simplest way. And Coke, it's not too late for you. You could just do that too.
Well, yeah, we'll actually have since Sophie's coming back and bringing her Switch from school, there'll be 3 Switches in the house and just 1 copy of the game. So maybe maybe I do need to get one of the kids to do some work around the house and earn themselves their own copy.
That's right.
Do all you guys have multiple Switches but me?
I only have the one.
Oh, because I have 2 docks, but only 1 Switch.
How? How did that happen?
Well, we like playing in on the TV, especially for games we share like Zelda. And I just got tired of having to unhook the dock and then hook it in the bedroom and then take it out of the bedroom, hook it back in the living room. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get a second dock. So,
cool.
But we'll only have the 1 copy of the game. So, yeah, not judging those who get 2. Each person does their own thing. But, yeah, I do kind of want to though. Now that I hear you guys talk.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty cool. It would be a bit of a splurge for me because it's just my kids and I. I don't think they need their own copy.
Time it though. Like, what if Justin? What if you only play for an hour and Katie plays for like 6 or 7 hours? Like, do you try to sync up or?
We do. Like if we at least with Breath of the Wild, we did kind of have like similar play sessions. So I'd play for a couple hours, she'd play for a couple hours. So we were fairly like in tandem with where we were throughout the game. But like if we were getting somewhere, like, oh, don't tell me that, so like we didn't get to share like maybe a whole lot of stories about the game until we both finished it, so we did kind of, but we did try to like pace ourselves through the game kind of similarly. I may have been going a little bit quicker though, since I was reviewing it. I was trying to get as much play time, which I'm going to be trying to do with Tears of the Kingdom as well. So I might, be playing just a little bit more and then just, not able to share stories until she's further along too. But.
Well, that's good for her then too, because, she gets caught on something. You're like, oh, you know what? If you go here, you're going to get this item that's really going to help when you take on this guy. Yeah. So, I mean, isn't it good to have someone ahead of you?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So,
like a built-in cheat code.
Yeah. Well, you've got your son to do that, haven't you, Kirk? So
Yes. And if I'm having trouble beating a particular monster, I just hand over the controller, let him go, and I come back in 5 minutes and progress.
Nice. I just will have to keep trying, I think. That's okay.
When you were
Getting
talking
there. They're
about
almost old enough.
Yeah, exactly.
You were talking about the Sky Islands, Gemma, and there was one thing, like the last trailer. I think a lot of us probably had that feeling of like, man, this looks really similar, like what they had shown up to, like even Eiji Aonuma's gameplay session was like, so is it just the islands? Is that all they changed? Obviously they keep saying that the Hyrule, the overworld, is changed fairly significantly too, but that last trailer they did, that really did kind of like, okay, yeah, there's underground places, looks like there's quite a bit more that's new in the overworld as well, in addition to the Sky Island. So yeah, I am excited to explore again, and hopefully it feels still really fresh, right? And it's those maybe the times you come across things you recognize from Breath of the Wild are like cool callbacks, but there's still plenty of new things to do, right? And new, but
yeah, I think that sounds right. I heard someone refer to it as $70 DLC at one point.
That was the common complaint, I think, before that last trailer. I think the last trailer that's harder to justify, but I mean, I could still maybe see, again, we haven't seen a whole lot, but once the game comes out, I think that's going to finally put that critique to rest. Hopefully there's just so much content. It's like, oh man, this is like, yes, it's the same world, but this is a true sequel. This is not just expansion. But
and I'm wondering, like, it's hard to get a sense of scale, like, because even like in Breath of the Wild, you go out on the plateau and you're like, oh, it's big, but you don't really get a sense of how big it is until you're walking, and like an hour later you're still walking. So like with these islands, are some of these like Skyloft sized islands? Like, because they don't look like they're just little rocks. They look, different shapes, different sizes. I'm wondering how big, not the overworld, but the islands in the sky, how big they actually are. How much depth and scope and things like that. And it's hard to tell from a trailer for me. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think they wouldn't want to give away more in the trailer anyway. Like seeing a trailer and then referring to it as $70 DLC, as you said, is kind of weird, because of course they're not going to show us everything, right? They want us to continue to be surprised over the 150 hours it takes to complete the game. So I expect that what we've seen so far is just a tiny, tiny portion, and they're saving not even just the big surprises, but a lot of little surprises along the way. And it's just going to continue to elate us as we move along. That could be overly optimistic, but I mean, this is Nintendo we're talking about, and they certainly know how to top themselves and know how to keep things fresh moving forward, as we've seen time and time again. So I have no worries at all that I'm going to be playing the game, and after 15 hours, I'll be like, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, this is a series that's been going for a long time, and we've never been let down before. I mean, look at Breath of the Wild and how different that was, and unique and new. And now it's, 29 million copies, I think, of that particular game have been sold.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I guess with this one, I mean, there's 122 odd million Switches out there now.
Yeah.
Do we think this Tears of the Kingdom iteration will surpass Breath of the Wild in terms of sales?
Yeah, I think it will. I think, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I do think that Tears of the Kingdom can surpass Breath of the Wild. I do think that it's probably going to set some records for fastest to certain, thresholds, like 10 million
opening
copies.
Weekend will be huge.
Yeah, it's probably gonna. What was it? I think did Pokemon set a record? It was like 10 or 12 million in 3 days or something.
Wow.
When Scarlet and Violet came out, November last year.
Yeah.
I do think that Tears of the Kingdom has the potential to beat that. Now well, I don't know, maybe not. Pokemon is a force all to its own, but there is a ton of people that are really excited about Tears of the Kingdom, and if people are buying like multiple copies, and you've got again 120 plus million Switches out there, I would not be surprised if it does 10 million very as fast or fairly as quickly as Pokemon did. But
yeah, I agree.
I think the only question with sales, and I agree that it's going to fly out of the gate, but whether it's gaming or movies or music, sometimes things get front loaded, and then God forbid this game doesn't review that well, or there's some bad word of mouth, or people are like, it is kind of DLC-ish, then maybe sales could taper off quicker than expected. I don't foresee that, but that is a potential. Not, I'd love to see each subsequent Zelda game outsell the last, but that doesn't happen. So, yeah, I mean, this is a unique one building off, the last games. I don't know. I'm hoping it does surpass. The audience is there for it to surpass, but I think a lot of it, obviously not for us diehard Nintendo guys, we're going to buy it day one, but for some of the less enthusiastic about Nintendo, some who are not going to buy multiple copies or not buy Amiibo or special editions, they're going to wait and see how it reviews. And for better or worse, I mean, what if this doesn't get 90 something in Metacritic?
Yeah, it's
not
a tough
to be a
sell.
Debbie Downer, but I'm just throwing it out there.
It's definitely, it really does depend on if the reviewers, if there is enough content that really, is maybe too similar to Breath of the Wild, then I could see some reviewers like, this is a really amazing, like, but I'm hoping it may be like a Mario Galaxy 2 situation. Like we all agree Mario Galaxy 2 is amazing, right? Like amazing game. And I think a lot of us would agree that Mario Galaxy 2 probably did it better. Like we would agree, like, okay, Galaxy, that was incredible. Galaxy 2 came out. Oh wow, that's just as incredible and then some, right? So I think Tears of the Kingdom has the potential for that, but I mean, the only thing could be that lingering feeling of like, oh, it's the same Hyrule, or granted, there's gonna be changes. I know there's gonna be changes, but like every other Zelda game has had a fairly different world for us to explore, right? So that's just the only thing that might not go for it. But you're right, Trev. There still is potential. Like some people would be like, Breath of the Wild was once in a generation game. Yeah, this one's, could get high 80s maybe. I don't know. I still think it could still get into the 90s and, maybe match, or I don't know that it'll surpass Breath of the Wild, but in Metacritic, but I could see it. I could see it in the 90s, just of all of the gameplay things that it's doing. Like it's doing just some really unique things that just no other games do. So it's going to be interesting how the reviewers, what they do with it. But.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And even just talking about it, amongst ourselves, and I talk to friends outside of the team, here at home in Australia, people are talking about it, for better or for worse, even though there's some concerns. I have a friend who's hugely into Zelda and is watching all the videos about Tears of the Kingdom, but is also, and has it pre-ordered, of course, but is also a little worried, just like some of the things we've aired. So there's that trepidation a little bit about whether it can live up to the expectation. But I think, like Trev said, it's the initial sales will do well. Whether it tapers off or not is to be seen, depending on those reviews. But the fact remains that there's interest. And I can't think of the last time a game was this hyped. It's just so hyped up right now. Like everyone's talking about it. It's definitely Nintendo's biggest game of the year, if not the Switch's life cycle almost. I mean, it's bigger than Breath of the Wild, even though that was a launch title and that was huge. This is like they need to outdo themselves with this one. They need to better what they already did. And yeah, whether that's bringing back dungeons to appease those fans, whether it's expanding Hyrule to make it seem different so that it's not just retreading old ground. There's a lot riding on this. I don't envy Nintendo's position, but I also think, as Kirk said, Nintendo's never let us down before when it comes to this series. There's a lot of love there. And I think we've said this before, Nintendo fans can be fickle. So you've got to be aware of that as well. But for the most part, I think we know and love this series enough that we'll find ourselves enjoying it immensely. Hopefully.
And you're talking about fickle, Gemma.
Mm-hmm.
Or all the people are saying, "Oh, it looks too much like Breath of the Wild." There's going to be those that play it and be like, "Oh, it's not enough like Breath of the Wild."
True. That's so true.
Like, there's no winning.
Yeah, you can't please everybody. We know that. We know that exactly.
And one of the things you're bringing up too, Gemma, like this game is getting really hyped, right? But I think that Nintendo's also been managing the hype fairly well. Like you said, there's still plenty of people out there that have the game pre-ordered, but are also like just cautious with it. You know what I mean? Like, and I think Nintendo, the way they've done this marketing cycle for the game, it's been a little frustrating, I think, for the fans because it's been kind of just a drip feed, right? Like we're, just finally like a month out from launch, we got that final trailer that finally gives us some more, just information of what the whole game is going to be like. And so I think some of the hype has just been building in this last month, right? But really before that, Nintendo was really quiet, especially compared with, the Breath of the Wild lead up. Now, granted, they had to justify a lot of things with Breath of the Wild. They were changing a lot of the conventions with the Zelda franchise. And so they knew they had to sell people on this concept, right? They don't have to sell us anymore, So, and I actually this could just be a real like master class in marketing with Nintendo. Like if it all goes well, if like the game reviews well, people are going to look back at this and going to be like, man, Nintendo was so smart to not do too much marketing, right? Because what it's done is it's had people cautiously optimistic rather than just hyped out of their minds, right?
Yeah.
It's so, and I think that's the better end to be on, because if the reviewers are cautiously optimistic, if fans are cautiously optimistic, then they get the game and it's exceeding those expectations. That's better than the opposite, right? Like if their expectations are through the roof across the board. Oh, it's a sequel to one of the best games of all time. Of course it's going to be great. And then they go into it and it's like, oh, so I think Nintendo's been managing the expectations fairly well, either intentionally or accidentally. I think they're onto something here that if you look at some of the other high profile sequels that have launched within the last year, like you look at the new God of War game, God of War Ragnarok, you look at Horizon Forbidden West, you look at those two, they scored kind of the same as their previous iterations, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. But most people consider them kind of safe sequels. They're both, I would consider like they're doing better and more things. They have more content. There's things that they're definitely doing better than their previous games, but most people are like, they just didn't change up the gameplay enough to not be considered just safe sequels. So that's the thing that Nintendo has to balance here. And I think all those gameplay things they even showed us in Aonuma's demo shows that there's a lot of new gameplay possibilities in this. So that to me is already a step in the right direction. Again, I'm not trying to get too hyped there, but again, not just Nintendo fans, but fans in general are fickle, right? A publisher's like, hey, you really like this game? Let's just do more of that with just more stuff. And then fans are like, oh, it's kind of like the other game and it just has more of the same, it's like, but we gave you exactly what you loved. So, there's a fine balance between giving the fans what they want and also, you've got to exceed their expectations, right? And I think that, maybe Nintendo's been watching some of those other games and seeing how they've kind of had, some still solid response, but they're like, okay, we've got to, maybe hold more close to the chest so we can. Anyways, sorry, I went on a long rant.
No, that's brilliant. Makes perfect sense.
Rant,
Yeah.
You're like an old man yelling at the cloud, Justin.
Yeah, or a sky island in this case.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, it was interesting, and to Justin's point, like the first Breath of the Wild, it wasn't just the new ideas within a Zelda game, but Nintendo was really banking the Switch on that game. After the Wii U's failures, it's like, all right, the 3DS can't keep us alive forever. We need this to be a hit.
Yeah.
People aren't going to be buying a Switch for a 1-2 Switch or, Bomberman, or you think back to the launch of the Switch, there wasn't a whole lot. Everyone was playing Zelda. And that's what Nintendo needed to get this in their hands. Now the Switch is flirting with potentially, DS level sale figures. So they have the audience built in. So it's like, yeah, we don't have to push the game as hard because that work's already been done 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, the groundwork's been laid.
That's a really good point. And I mean, you're right. The Switch outsold the Game Boy earlier this year, as in it surpassed the Game Boy sales, and now it's creeping up on the DS. I think it's still a few. What was the DS? 154 odd million.
Something like
Switch,
that.
Yeah, and Switch is on 122. So it's obviously still being manufactured and made, and we've got people buying it a lot. So it could easily do that. It's now the second best selling Nintendo console. I think third best selling console overall. So it's doing amazingly.
Is it third? What two are ahead? I know the PS2 and DS are like neck and neck.
PS2, yeah, and DS, and then
and DS.
Switch. Yes,
That's right.
and I think the PS2 is very close to the DS.
It's less than 1 million or something.
Yeah, super close. So, yeah, that's interesting. Something else we haven't really talked about is that the Breath of the Wild came out with the Switch, which is, like you said, Trev, excuse me, it was they had a lot of riding on that one because they needed the Switch to do well. But these big Zelda games do often come out at the end or the start or both of a life cycle of a system, don't they? And we've been talking so much about, well, not just us, everyone has been talking about a Switch sequel, Switch 2, Super Switch, as our friend Barry referred to it in a podcast a few weeks ago. I mean, this is purely speculative at this point, but what do we think? They would have announced something by now, right? If it was tied in with Zelda, it would have already been a thing.
Yeah.
Would it make sense to even launch a new system immediately after they've released a huge game like Tears of the Kingdom? Maybe not.
No, I mean, historically, you gotta for a new system. It's not just building a pipe, but like manufacturing concerns and stuff. Like the only time I can think of where a company tried like that kind of sneaky launch was like Sega with the Saturn, and that did not go well. And of course, that's going back almost 30 years now. So, Nintendo's aware of the rumors that have been going on for years now, and obviously they are working on every company's always working on their next system, but Nintendo's smart. They're going to maximize their money.
Yeah. I don't think they're not going to reveal it too soon, right? Like, I think they're going to, the big focus is on Tears of the Kingdom, right? And then there's only one other Nintendo title they've announced in Pikmin 4, and that's July 21. We don't know anything beyond that except for obviously Metro Prime 4, which, we'll hopefully hear some news on at some point, but there's no other titles beyond that, right? There's no other future Nintendo things we know about, even hardware wise. So, but yeah, I think Trev's right. Like, they're not going to want to cut the legs off of Zelda sales, right? Like, let's say it does review well and the thing is selling like crazy 2-3 months. Let's say it's August. They don't want to announce a new Switch if someone's on the fence and they're like, man, I got to get a Switch because I got to play this Tears of the Kingdom. Everybody's talking about it, right? Like, they want people to be making those decisions to buy a Switch into the holiday, I would think. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I could see a scenario where a new Switch maybe comes out next year. Something that's kind of similar to this is Majora's Mask came out, I think, in 2000, and the GameCube came out in 2001, I believe. So you have a scenario where, like you said, Gemma, Zelda kind of is at the beginning or the end, right, of a cycle. I could very much see Zelda. It is going to be at the closer to the end than the beginning of the Switch's life cycle, or Tears of the Kingdom anyway. So
it's like it's bookending, really, because we started the Switch with Breath of the Wild with Zelda, and now potentially ending with Tears of the Kingdom, which would be interesting.
And we have to figure, guys. They did an expansion pass for Breath of the Wild. That was the first time Nintendo had done something like that was with the Zelda franchise. And I think people are anticipating they might be doing something similar. Now, I don't think they would want to lock that behind upgrading to a new system by any means, but I do think we'll have like continuing content for Tears of the Kingdom maybe over the next year, right? They could maybe even have something debuting this holiday and then a secondary, pack middle of next year. But
that's a good point. Yeah, I meant to ask you about that actually, because we haven't heard if there would be DLC yet, right? I mean, the game's not out yet, but they haven't said we've planned DLC, but we would expect that, right? After Breath of the Wild. Did that DLC do well? Do we know?
I don't know if they reported on sales for the DLC, but I would imagine it did well, but I don't know if they've reported on sales of that individually or not.
Do they ever do that? Come to think of it, do they report on DLC sales? Like, how's Mario Kart going? I wonder. But anyway, Mario Kart's Mario Kart. It's a thing like Pokemon. It's a thing unto itself, isn't it? It's just I think that's the top selling Switch game, isn't it? Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Yeah.
So that DLC was bound to do well. Yeah, well, I do hope there's DLC, and that makes sense as well. If they're going to do sort of 6 to 12 months worth of follow-ups after the game's released, again, they'd be cutting off their legs or shooting themselves in the foot if they had a new system so soon afterwards. So we'll see.
Yeah. Would they even want to announce DLC? Because potentially people could be like, "Oh, it's not even complete."
True.
Like, it's unfinished. Like,
gosh, it's a tough gig, isn't it?
I would want to probably give it some time. Maybe I'm trying to remember. Did the expansion? So Breath of the Wild came out in March. And then the expansion pass, I thought, got announced at E3 that year. So it was only like a 3-month gap.
Yeah. So we could
like
expect,
March to June or something. But
well, we've got Gamescom in August, and we've got the Nintendo Live event in September, right? So the few chances, and I mean, you would think, depending on what else they've got planned for the rest of the year after Pikmin, maybe DLC is a holiday incentive to boost sales of Tears of the Kingdom. Don't know. It's a mystery, and Nintendo loves to shroud things in mystery, I think, in general. And you mentioned their marketing tactics, and I think they do a good job in their own way. It's sometimes frustrating for us fans, but generally it seems to work, right? I mean,
you know that Futurama meme, "Shut up and take my money"? That's really based on Nintendo.
Yes, exactly.
Nintendo's one of their mantras is to surprise and delight, right? Like they want to surprise us. Like a lot of their games have those moments of like, oh, I can do that now, or like you get in these new abilities. There's surprising moments worked into all of their games. So I know that it is really just at the core, and I'm glad there's not that other game companies aren't doing that, but I like that Nintendo has that focus of still trying to surprise us with things. A lot of games maybe give away too much, or they there's not as much. When you get into the game, there wasn't that much that they hadn't already shown about this. But I
love that sentiment. That's one of the reasons I love Nintendo. They do surprise and delight me. So thank you, Nintendo.
Well, it's also easier for them because they have all the attention. Like third-party companies have to constantly hype their own games because they're going up against bigger companies, and where trying to pull your focus away from, like, say, Tears of the Kingdom. So, they tend to talk more because you're always looking the other way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually saw a tweet from I think it was Devolver Digital, Kirk, that was really funny. It said, like, after the recent Tears of the Kingdom trailer, they tweeted out, remind me not to publish anything the week of May 12th.
Yeah.
I'll be curious to see what non-Tears of the Kingdom press releases we get that week, and maybe give them some extra love just to help them out for having the guts to do that.
I know.
Yeah. I did see some games on the eShop that are going up against Zelda, and not against Zelda, but they're launching the same day, and it's just that's a. I mean, on the one hand, they're not necessarily going against it, but maybe they're trying to ride the wave of that success. Oh, there's a ton of people going to be on the eShop. Here, let's launch the same day. So.
True. Yeah, that's true. If you see the what's new screen on the eShop and you're looking for Tears of the Kingdom, but next to it is something else that catches your eye, maybe. Oh yeah, you could save it to your favorites or not.
Or they have the knockoff version, like one of those companies do. It'll be like Kingdom of the Teardrops or something, and try grandma. Yeah, it kind of looks like that game.
It's only $5. It's perfect. Yeah.
Wow.
For a deal.
Everybody's grandparents or parents buying it for you instead of what you want.
Yeah.
You have to smile and be like, thank you.
Yeah.
This is just what I was hoping for.
I got you the Tears game. Come on.
That'd be funny. The game is just called Tears. Just Tears.
You're trying to play it for me. I want to see what it's like. Okay.
Yeah. Woo.
The Accolade trailer will be like, this game moved me to tears.
That's going in the snippet. Speaking of Tears of the Kingdom, which we've been doing now for almost an hour, but speaking of the name Tears of the Kingdom, do we know why it's called Tears of the Kingdom?
Well, from what I hear of Zelda, every time she talks, she sounds like she's getting ready to bust into tears. and granted, there's a lot going on. She's got the weight of
the world,
the kingdom on her shoulders, but you got to wonder what kind of maybe heartache is in store.
Yeah. And she has this little teardrop, little things under her eye, well, one under her eye, under each eye, little symbols. But I didn't even realize this at first until yesterday when I was watching some breakdowns on YouTube that she's got a teardrop pendant around her neck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that the tear? Like, is that one of the Tears of the Kingdom? And do our other friends that we talked about at Avengers Style each have their own tear that we're trying to put together in some sort of gauntlet fashion to stop Ganon?
Or Zelda Link Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah.
I think I was watching some breakdowns of the trailer, and I think there were some other tears that were spotted in the trailer. So I think yes, they are going to be some sort of item. I don't know if we're going to get the item in the game necessarily, but I think some of what the title is talking about is those items and maybe those champions that are holding them. Maybe so. But I think, Nintendo likes double meanings. And you remember, like, there was that rumor that they didn't even want to announce the title because they thought it would spoil the game.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, if you know the story and you know the connection, but like for us, like Tears of the Kingdom, nothing's really spoiled in that from our perspective, right? We don't know the end from the beginning yet. But I do think Tears, they probably wanted that double meaning of, like, it does seem like the stakes are higher. Like, Calamity Ganon, that was a crazy thing, but it seems like Ganondorf, like, there's a much darker tone even from the very first trailer of this game, right? Like, so maybe Tears of the Kingdom is somehow just speaking to, like, the kingdom is in an upheaval. It's falling again, and there's just a lot of maybe sorrow. I don't know, but
I hope it's not going to end like the first Infinity Wars movie. Avengers Infinity Wars, where it was like
Ganondorf's going to snap his fingers.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, they'll set up for the sequel on Switch 2 then.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, Gemma, I was thinking though, with like kind of the like the whole Avengers thing, like there would be a little bit of precedent because, like, wasn't it Twilight Princess? Like the people from the village came and like were shooting arrows at the castle while Link kind of went in the innards. So maybe it could be something similar here. Like throughout your adventure, the characters you meet will kind of come at the end and maybe do like the Divine Beast. They're not going to defeat Ganon for you, but maybe knock off some of his edge.
Yeah.
So you can take him down easier. I don't know.
Yeah. I just like that they're all banding together. It's like they know Link is the chosen one sort of thing, like the chosen warrior. And he's obviously, he's protecting the land on behalf of Zelda, and she's doing her thing too. But the people are behind Link and Zelda. They're obviously, they don't want,
they don't want
the blood moon.
One. And now you're making me think of Anakin Skywalker. Maybe at the end, Link will join up with Ganon. And be like, we were supposed to destroy Ganon, not join him.
No.
That would be those are the twists we don't want. We don't need
that's tears of the fans. That's tears of the players.
Yeah, tears of
yeah. Imagine though the press they'd get.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at Link's arm. It's all funky, right? What's happening there? I know the Malice kind of took the sword or whatever.
Evil taking him over.
Yeah. It's beginning.
Oh, that's good marketing too. Leave it like that. Leave it hanging open, then say, now you got to buy the Switch Pro or 2 in order to find out what happens.
Yeah.
That's right.
Is Link a bad guy? Buy a new system and find out.
And we'd all do it twice. Come on. Oh my gosh, there's so much to look forward to. It's very, very exciting. I guess, yeah, I know. It's crazy. Yes. With that in mind, since we're coming in on close to an hour here, do we have any final kind of random theories or thoughts or predictions or any other things we want to say we haven't already said? Who would like to say something?
I don't know how interesting this is, but I dreamt of the game.
Oh, that is interesting.
It's pretty rare for me to like dream of a video game, but I think as we're getting now to the final week, my hype's building.
Wow. See? What did I say? Hyped. It's hyped. It's even in Trev's dreams. So,
My prediction isn't specific for the game, but I predict there's going to be some maybe late Pure Nintendo articles because let's be honest, if they're not done by like next Thursday night,
it's going to be tough.
Let's be honest. There's going to be a general lack of productivity across the world. Economy.
Yeah. We'll have our own sort of calamity where things will just grind to a halt.
Exactly. We got to save the world. We're going to take a couple weeks to break.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have to admit, I did dream about it last night as well, but that's probably because I was up late watching trailers in preparation for the podcast. So yeah, that usually happens the night before a podcast because it's morning for me, and I tend to think during the night. So does that count? Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I feel you though. I dream about stuff like that often just because it's in my mind. But yeah.
And after this podcast, Kirk and Justin will dream too.
Yeah.
I've had dreams about games before. It's funny with Breath of the Wild, guys. I was super hyped for that, and it was probably in hindsight a bad thing, and led to some of my disappointment in certain aspects of Breath of the Wild. So I'm trying to, I still am excited about it, but I have been like trying to just not think about it too much, and the time will go by slower too, thinking about it too much, and so I haven't really been like some of the time has just been going by like, oh, I got plenty of work to do. Oh, it's here. Oh, okay, so I've been trying to take that approach this time, so hopefully I'm a bit more
But then we dedicated a whole podcast to it. So how has that helped your situation?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, certainly talking about it with you, it does. It's like, man, it's just a week left. Man, this is crazy. So I am excited, and obviously, we got Katie the special edition Switch, and so you're getting more excited about it, and but. Anyways, I just keep reminding myself, just keep your expectations in check.
Exactly.
Not traditional dungeons. We're not rioting. It's just
fun. We'll see. I think they'll have something, even if it's some kind of hybrid. We'll see.
Yeah, even if it's not one-to-one comparison, I think to me that was the most universal feedback that most people had. Like even the people that still lauded, Breath of the Wild as like the best game of all time. We're still like, oh yeah, I could use some dungeons, So I think that hopefully there's something that is at least beyond what they did with Divine Beast, even if it's not fully to them.
So really, it was the best game of all time so far, as Homer says in the Simpsons movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's brilliant. I've loved this discussion. Thank you so much for taking part today. I think my hype level has just gone through the roof now. I do have I'm not getting the OLED or anything special edition wise, but as I mentioned to Kirk last week, I am getting the controller. It's pre-ordered. It's arriving on Friday. I'm super excited to start playing with the controller, the new controller. And I'll give my son my old controller. So
with the drift.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. But thank you again, and thank you, listeners, for taking part in our show today. Please leave us a review. If you're on YouTube, give us a like and a subscribe. We love what we do. We love talking about games, and we hope you've enjoyed listening. Did you have any closing comments, Justin, for today?
No, just everyone get Zelda and enjoy it, and we'll be excited to talk about it coming up here.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, and game on. Until next time.